The eviction notice crumpled in Marcus Hartwell's calloused hand as he stared at the listing that made no sense. $50 for an entire cabin seemed like a cruel joke, but his 80-year-old son Ezra pressed against his side, pointing at the faded photograph on the courthouse bulletin board. "Nobody sells a house for $50, Dad. There has to be something wrong with it, right?" Ezra's voice carried that mixture of hope and worry that had become too familiar since his mother died 2 years ago. Marcus studied the grainy image of a weathered log structure surrounded by overgrown wilderness. The listing mentioned structural damage, no utilities, and immediate cash sale only. He had exactly $63 left after losing his construction job last month. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up when Marcus approached. "You serious about the Whitmore place? That old cabin's been sitting empty for 15 years. Previous owner died. Family wants it gone. No inspections, no guarantees, sold as is." Marcus felt the weight of Ezra's small hand slip into his. They had 3 days before the homeless shelter would no longer hold their beds. Winter was coming to Colorado, and his boy deserved better than sleeping in his truck again. "I'll take it," Marcus said quietly, counting out 5 $10 bills onto the scratch counter. The clerk shrugged, sliding a single-page contract across to him. The gravel road disappeared into weeds 2 miles before they reached the cabin. Marcus's battered pickup truck lurched through ruts and fallen branches while Ezra pressed his face to the passenger window, breath fogging the glass as he peered into the dense Colorado forest. "It's like a treasure hunt, Dad. Maybe that's why it was so cheap. Maybe nobody else wanted to drive this far." Marcus didn't have the heart to tell his son that cheap usually meant worthless. When the trees finally parted, revealing their $50 investment, his stomach dropped. The log cabin sagged like a broken smile, its roof patched with mismatched materials and half the front porch missing entirely. Windows stared back at them like empty eye sockets, several boarded over with warped plywood. Ezra bounded from the truck before Marcus could stop him, his sneakers squelching through mud toward the front door. The boy's excitement felt like mockery against the reality of their situation. Marcus had spent his last money on a structure that looked ready to collapse. "Look, Dad, the logs are huge, and there's a stone chimney," Ezra called out, running his small hands along the weathered timber. "This is way better than the shelter. We can fix it up together, right?" Marcus forced a smile, pulling their sleeping bags from the truck bed. "Sure, buddy. We'll make it work." But as he stepped onto the creaking porch, he wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The front door groaned open on rusted hinges, releasing the musty scent of decades-old abandonment. Dust motes danced in the afternoon, light streaming through gaps in the boarded windows. Marcus stepped carefully across warped floorboards while Ezra darted ahead, his voice echoing in the empty rooms. "Dad, come look at this fireplace. It's massive." The stone hearth dominated the main room, blackened with soot but solidly built. Marcus ran his hand along the mantelpiece, noting the craftsmanship in the fitted stones. Someone had built this place to last, back when such work meant something. 2 small bedrooms branched off the main space, along with a kitchen that hadn't seen use in years. The hand-pumped well outside still produced clear water, and the old wood-burning stove looked functional despite its age. "We can sleep by the fireplace tonight," Ezra announced, already unrolling his sleeping bag on the cleanest section of floor. "It'll be like camping, but with walls." Marcus found himself studying the cabin's construction more carefully. The foundation stones were perfectly fitted, the log joints expertly sealed. This wasn't some hastily thrown-together shack. The craftsmanship reminded him of something, stirring memories from his architectural studies years ago, before life had stripped away everything except the need to survive. "Yeah, buddy," he said softly, watching his son arrange their few possessions. "Just like camping." Morning light revealed details that darkness had hidden. Marcus sipped instant coffee from a dented camping mug, while Ezra explored every corner of their new home with the thoroughness only children possess. The boy had discovered a narrow staircase leading to a small loft, his footsteps creaking overhead as he investigated. "Dad, there's carved letters up here," Ezra called down. "They look really old." Marcus climbed the steep stairs, ducking under low beams. The loft space was cramped but dry, and carved into one of the support beams were initials, RW 1889. Below that, barely visible, were more markings that looked like surveyor's notes. Robert Whitmore, Marcus murmured, remembering the name from the deed. The original owner. As trained, I began noticing other details. The window frames were hand-fitted with mortise and tenon joints. The floorboards were wide plank pine, old-growth timber that would cost a fortune today. This wasn't just good craftsmanship, it was period-authentic construction from the 1880s. Ezra pressed against the loft's single window, rubbing away grime with his sleeve. "Dad, look how far you can see from up here. It's like being in a treehouse, but better." Marcus joined him at the window. Through the clear glass, the Rocky Mountain vista stretched endlessly, peaks catching morning sun like cathedral spires. For the first time since buying this place, he felt something other than despair. The trip to town for supplies brought unwelcome attention. At Miller's General Store, Marcus felt the weight of curious stares as he counted out exact change for canned goods and batteries. The elderly clerk, Doris, leaned across the counter with poorly concealed interest. "So you're the fool who bought the old Whitmore place," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Hope you didn't pay much for that money pit." $50, Marcus replied quietly, loading groceries into a worn paper bag. Doris cackled, drawing attention from other customers. $50 too much. That place has been falling down since I was a girl. My late husband always said old Robert was crazy, living way out there by himself. Of course, that was back when folks still talked about his treasure nonsense. Ezra tugged at Marcus's jacket sleeve, but Marcus was suddenly focused on the clerk's words. "What treasure?" "Oh, Robert claimed he'd struck it rich somehow, but he died poor as dirt. Just wild stories about gold and such." "You ask me." Living alone up there scrambled his brains. The other customers chuckled, shaking their heads at the gullible outsider who'd fallen for local legends. Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment, but something in the clerk's dismissive tone reminded him of professors who'd once laughed at unconventional theories that later proved revolutionary. Outside, Ezra looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dad, what if the treasure stories are real?" Back at the cabin, Marcus found himself studying the carved initials with new interest. His years of architectural preservation work had taught him to read buildings like historical documents. Every mark told a story. Every modification revealed purpose. Ezra sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, sorting through a box of rusted tools they'd found under the kitchen floorboards. "Dad, why would someone hide tools under the house?" Marcus knelt beside the box, lifting out items that made his pulse quicken. A surveyor's compass, still in working condition. Hand-forged mining picks, their edges worn smooth from use. And at the bottom, wrapped in oiled leather, a leather-bound notebook filled with precise sketches and measurements. The pages revealed detailed maps of the surrounding mountains, marked with symbols Marcus recognized from his graduate studies in mining engineering. Robert Whitmore hadn't been a simple homesteader. He'd been a trained surveyor and geologist. "Look at this, Ezra. These aren't random doodles. Your great-great-grandfather was mapping mineral deposits." Ezra's eyes widened. So the treasure stories might be true? Marcus studied the intricate drawings, cross-referenced with topographical notes that showed sophisticated understanding of geological formations. The final pages contained what appeared to be location coordinates, marked with a symbol he didn't recognize. "Maybe they are, buddy. Maybe they are." The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like golden possibilities. The surveyor's compass needle trembled as Marcus held it steady, following Robert's meticulously drawn bearing lines. Ezra walked beside him through the pine forest, clutching the leather notebook and calling out measurements from the faded pages. 37 paces northeast from the lightning-struck oak, Ezra read aloud. Marcus counted his steps carefully, his boots crunching through decades of fallen needles. The coordinates led them to a rocky outcropping that looked unremarkable until he knelt for closer inspection. Scratched into the granite surface was the same symbol from the notebook's final page. Ezra pressed his small fingers into the carved mark. Dad, it's like a star, but with extra points. That's a mining survey marker, Marcus explained, his excitement growing. Robert used standard geological notation. This symbol indicates a significant mineral find. They spent the next hour following additional markers, each one leading deeper into the forest. Marcus's training told him they were tracking a carefully planned survey route, not the random wanderings of a deluded hermit. At the fourth marker, Ezra stopped abruptly. Dad, listen. Marcus held his breath, hearing only wind through the pines. Then he caught it, the faint sound of running water coming from somewhere beneath their feet. According to the notebook, Marcus said, studying Robert's notes, we should be standing above an underground stream. And where mountain streams flow through granite formations, gold. Ezra finished, bouncing with excitement. The entrance was hidden behind a curtain of hanging moss and fallen boulders. Marcus almost missed it entirely until Ezra's sharp eyes caught the deliberate arrangement of stones that didn't match the natural rockfall pattern. Dad, someone stacked these rocks on purpose. Look how they fit together. Marcus pulled away the moss, revealing a narrow opening barely wide enough for a man. Cool air flowed from within, carrying the scent of mineral-rich water. He clicked on his flashlight, the beam penetrating into darkness that seemed to swallow the light. The tunnel beyond was hand-carved, supported by timber beams that showed Robert Whitmore's engineering skill. Marcus recognized the construction technique from his studies of 19th-century mining operations. Every support was precisely placed, every angle calculated for maximum stability. Ezra pressed close behind him as they moved deeper into the mountain. The sound of running water grew louder, echoing off stone walls that sparkled with moisture. Is it safe, Dad? Marcus tested each beam as they advanced, finding the construction solid despite its age. Safer than most modern buildings I've worked on. Robert knew what he was doing. The tunnel opened into a natural cavern where an underground stream cascaded over granite ledges. But it wasn't the water that made Marcus's breath catch. It was what lined the stream bed, glinting like scattered stars in his flashlight beam. Ezra gasped beside him. Dad, is that really? Gold, Marcus whispered, his voice echoing in the cavern. A fortune in gold. Marcus waded into the shallow stream, the icy water soaking through his boots as he knelt to examine the gleaming deposits. His trained eye assessed what others might mistake for fool's gold or worthless minerals. The weight, the color, the way it caught the light, everything confirmed what seemed impossible. Ezra crouched beside the water's edge, pointing at the largest nuggets. There's so much of it, Dad. Why didn't Robert take it with him? Marcus studied the notebook's final entries, understanding dawning as he read Robert's careful notes. He was planning to extract it gradually, selling small amounts to avoid suspicion. But he died before he could begin. The cavern extended further into the mountain, following the natural watercourse. Marcus's flashlight revealed additional deposits embedded in the granite walls, some pieces the size of his fist. His mental calculations made his hands tremble. Conservative estimates suggested millions of dollars in recoverable gold, possibly tens of millions. The property they'd bought for $50 contained enough wealth to change not just their lives, but the lives of generations to come. We can't tell anyone yet, Marcus said quietly. Not until I understand the legal implications. Ezra nodded solemnly, mature beyond his years. It's our secret, Dad. They spent another hour documenting the find with Robert's notebook, Marcus sketching additional details with the precision his architectural training demanded. The old surveyor had left them more than treasure. He'd left them hope. The mining rights office in Denver was a maze of bureaucracy that Marcus navigated with growing confidence. His architectural background had taught him to read legal documents, and Colorado's mineral rights laws were clearer than he'd hoped. The property deed included mineral rights, the clerk confirmed, stamping forms with official authority. You own everything above and below ground, Mr. Hartwell. Back in the small mountain town, word of his strange trips to the city had spread. At Miller's General Store, Doris watched him with suspicious eyes as he purchased more supplies than usual. Mighty fancy shopping for a man living in a $50 shack, she observed loudly. Were you getting money for all this? Marcus kept his voice steady. Found some work in Denver. What kind of work? Pressed Tom Brennan, the local real estate developer who'd been trying to buy mountain property for years. You don't strike me as the type Denver folks would hire. The implied insult hung in the air while other customers gathered, sensing confrontation. Marcus felt Ezra's hand slip into his, small fingers offering support. Sometimes appearances can be deceiving, Marcus replied calmly. Brennan laughed harshly. Right? And I suppose you're going to tell us that old wreck you bought is worth something after all. The moment stretched taut with possibility. Marcus could reveal everything now, prove them all wrong in a blaze of vindication. Instead, he squeezed his son's hand gently. Time will tell, he said quietly. The assayer's report arrived on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. Marcus read the official document twice before the numbers sank in. Preliminary estimates placed the recoverable gold at $47 million, with potential for significantly more pending full geological survey. Ezra bounced on his toes as Marcus folded the papers carefully. So we're really rich now, Dad? We're really rich now, buddy. The phone call to Tom Brennan felt like settling an old debt. Marcus kept his voice professionally neutral as he delivered the news that would shake the entire town. I'm calling to inform you that the Colorado Mining Commission will be surveying my property next week. You might want to adjust your assessment of worthless mountain land. The silence stretched so long Marcus wondered if the connection had dropped. Finally, Brennan's voice returned, tight with disbelief. You're telling me you found something up there? A significant gold deposit, Marcus confirmed. The geological survey confirms it's one of the richest strikes in Colorado history. When the news broke publicly, the same people who'd mocked his $50 purchase lined up outside Miller's General Store, desperate to catch a glimpse of the man who'd become an overnight millionaire. Doris herself approached him with newfound respect, her earlier condescension replaced by nervous deference. Mr. Hartwell, I hope there's no hard feelings about anything I might have said before. Marcus smiled, remembering his son's simple wisdom about treasure hunts. Sometimes the best discoveries are hidden in plain sight. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the newly rebuilt porch of what was now officially designated as the Whitmore Historic Mining Site. The cabin had been lovingly restored using period-authentic techniques, its original craftsmanship honored, while modern conveniences were discreetly added. Ezra raced up the path from the school bus, his backpack bouncing as he waved a paper in the air. Dad, I got an A on my history project about Robert Whitmore. Mrs. Peterson said it was the best research she'd ever seen from a third grader. Marcus smiled, accepting the paper covered in gold star stickers. That's because you actually lived the history, buddy. The mining operation had been carefully designed to preserve the mountain's natural beauty while extracting the wealth Robert had so carefully documented. Marcus had established the Whitmore Foundation, ensuring that a portion of the profits would fund scholarships for children from struggling families. Tom Brennan had approached him twice about selling the property, each offer more desperate than the last. Marcus politely declined, understanding now that some treasures couldn't be measured in dollars alone. As evening painted the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold, father and son sat together on their restored porch. Ezra leaned against his father's arm, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Dad, do you think Robert knew someone would find his treasure someday? Marcus considered the question, remembering the careful maps and precise calculations. I think he hoped someone would, son. Someone who needed it as much as we did. If this story touched your heart, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you've ever discovered something valuable in an unexpected place.